Well, it is time for my favorite video of the year, the video where I break down my top movies of the year. This is a video that I always love to make because it's essentially a journal where I get to talk about and recount all the great, amazing movies I got to see in a certain year and rank them all the way up to my number one film. What is the best movie of the year, according to me, Joe Marchione. So I have a lot of movies to talk about, so I don't want to waste too much time. Before I do talk about all the movies here, which I have about 40-something of them, yeah, sorry, I'll jump through a lot of them really fast, so don't worry, you're not going to be here all day. I do want to talk about some films that I didn't get to see, some films that for whatever reason, either because I didn't want to see them or they weren't made available for me to see, but some movies that I think probably would have ended up somewhere in this video if I had seen them, maybe even near the top, but unfortunately didn't get to do it. First one is Blitz. This is the brand new Steve McQueen movie about World War II or something that happens in World War II. It's with Saoirse Ronan. I didn't see it because it just did not look like my type of film. I do love Steve McQueen, though. I will get around to this. Nickel Boy is one I heard a lot of good things about out of the festival scene. This is just one that I haven't had the chance to go see. Hasn't been any screenings near me. Eventually, I will check it out, and I'll let you know what I think of it. The Fire Inside, a brand new boxing movie that I actually really want to check out, just haven't gotten to it yet. Baby Girl, I'm seeing this in the next couple days. I might actually see this before I finish editing this video, so if I do, I will leave a little note right here as to where I think that movie would rank on this list. If there's no note, I'm just going to be rambling here for no reason. September 5th is the film about the Munich terrorist attack. I did not get to see this one either. Not a lot of screenings near me, but I really want to. Sing Sing, a movie that A24 apparently wants nobody to see because they made it, like, impossible to watch this film. This is the one movie that I haven't seen where I could say, this could have been top 5. It could have been top 1 because it looks incredible and I've heard nothing but amazing things. Just that A24 has been a pain in the butt and they just have made this movie extraordinarily difficult to watch. All right, let's head into the list. I have 30 films here. The first 15 I'll go through real fast and then the last 15 I'll talk about in a little more depth. At number 30 is Woman of the Hour. This is the film directed by Anna Kendrick, her first ever film that she's actually directed. She also stars in the film, and it's about a serial killer and a game show, and it's a true story. It's filled with tension, suspense. It's really dark, a little slow at times, a little bit of a slow burn, has a lot of great moments, and one of the better Netflix original films out there right now, so go check this one out. At 29 is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. This is a movie that I really loved when I first saw it, but it ended up being a lot more forgettable as time went on. Like, I completely forgot this movie even came out this year. Even though it was only like 6 months ago, I was sitting down watching this one. It's really long, a little bit slow, but still really entertaining, really engaging. And in the world of Planet of the Apes, definitely still one of the better films in that universe. But of like the new Matt Reeves universe that we have, probably the weakest. 28 is Carry On. This is a brand new film out of Netflix starring Taron Egerton. Just a really fun little thriller about a TSA agent who has to unravel this plot to load a bomb onto a plane. It's really, really good. Jason Bateman gives a fun performance. Just a really fun movie for the holidays. I had a lot more fun with this one than I thought I was going to have. 27 is Y2K. Kyle Mooney's little comedy thriller about, well, Y2K and this robot attack on humanity that we all thought might happen in the early 2000s. It never did. At the turn of the century, of course. This movie was just really fun. It reminded me a lot of those early 2000s style comedies. The comedy really worked for me. The third act kind of falls apart. It almost felt like the budget of the movie ran out and they just kind of had to mix things together that maybe didn't mix well. But all the performances are good, the comedy made me laugh, and this was just a good time in the movie theater that I think got a little overhated on. At 26 is Kind of Kindness, the Yorgos Lanthimos film of the year. This is like an anthology film about a bunch of different weird Yorgos stories, and yeah, you know what you're getting out of Yorgos at this point. If you like his style of films, which me, I'm like 50-50, sometimes it really works, sometimes it doesn't, but if you really like it, it's going to be one of your favorite things of the year. If you don't really engage with this stuff, you're going to hate this movie. Me, I really enjoyed this one. It was one of the biggest WTF movies of the year where you're just sitting there at the end of it like, what did I just watch? I just had a lot of fun with this one, though. Jesse Plemons is great. Emma Stone is great. I don't know if this one's going to get as much love or get talked about as much as Poor Things, but I had a great time with Kind of Kindness. At number 25 is The Bike Riders, another film that kind of felt forgettable in the grand scheme of things this year, but this is a very fun, sort of Martin Scorsese-esque gang movie about this biker gang. Tom Hardy gives a really great performance here. It's a film that feels like you're watching like a lifetime go by for these characters. Austin Butler gives sort of a fun performance. Norman Reedus is here. There's violence, there's drama. It's just a really good film to put on, especially if you want like a family night. Put on a family, maybe not for your kids. Like family, like with your elder family, right? Put on this movie. It's a good time. I showed this movie to my parents and they really loved it. 24 is Trap, an M. Night Shyamalan movie making my best of year list. I would have never seen that coming. What is it, 2004? Trap is a lot of fun. It's a movie that M. Night Shyamalan made as kind of like a love letter to his daughter who's actually in the movie. And you can really feel the fact that with this movie, he didn't put that much pressure on himself. It was just a fun time making this film. It's a film about the serial killer who's at a concert with his daughter, and the concert is meant to be a trap to find him, the serial killer. Performances are really, really good. The drama is tight, and there is a sense of suspense here. It's just a movie that flies by. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and I had a really good time with this one. It's one of M. Night's better films of the last decade. I recommend going to check it out. At 23 is Superman, my favorite documentary of the year. This is the documentary about Christopher Reeves, who of course was the original Superman. If you haven't seen this one yet, please go check it out. It's beautifully put together, extremely emotional, and gets you really, like, invested in the world of acting and also the world of Christopher Reeves and everything that had happened with him, in the same way that in years past the Val Kilmer documentary also sort of did a similar thing with. This is a brilliant, brilliant piece, and I really enjoyed this one. 22 is Juror Number 2. This is Clint Eastwood's final movie, possibly. It stars Nicholas Hoult, who had a marvelous year, and it's about this guy that sits on a jury for a crime that he slowly realizes throughout the process that he may have committed. Yeah, it's a courtroom procedural drama, or a jury procedural drama, and it really works. It's not perfect. There's a lot of things with this movie that don't necessarily work. Sometimes it's a little bit slower than other times. I still really, really enjoyed this one. It's dark. It's kind of that Clint Eastwood style film, which means it's very digestible. It's very engageable. Yet again, the performances here from Nick Hoult and Toni Collette are really good. I definitely recommend checking this one out as well, since they barely gave it a theatrical release. Screw you, Warner Brothers. 21 is A Real Pain. This is the brand new film from Jesse Eisenberg, which of course stars Jesse Eisenberg, and the real standout here, Kieran Culkin. Coming 1 year off of the end of Succession, Kieran Culkin's coming for that Oscar now. Yeah, he's incredible here. This whole movie's about these two cousins who are really kind of like brothers, who take a vacation to Poland to go see all of the Holocaust sites because their grandmother was a Holocaust survivor and she had recently passed away. Now, with that premise, there's a lot of emotion here. The movie gets extremely emotional, and it allows for all the actors involved to really give some really punchy performances, mainly from Kieran Culkin. This one's emotional, it's really deep, it's really dark, but it's also kind of simple in a way that makes it very digestible. I love this film. At number 20 is Gladiator 2, a film that I really thought was going to suck just because of where Ridley Scott is in his career, and although it's not as good as, you know, if you asked me 10 years ago if Gladiator 2 would have ever come out, I would say, and it's not as good as you would have liked Gladiator 2 to be, because the first one is such a masterpiece, but it's still a pretty epic Roman battle movie with Paul Mescal, who's great, and Denzel Washington playing a villain, and Pedro Pascal's here. Just a really big, epic film. If you lower your expectations for it to be this masterful, like, landmark film like the first one, and just expect a fun Roman action film that has some deep sort of themes here, you'll get that. It's a good film. And number 19 is Transformers 1, an incredibly surprising animated film that I really thought was going to suck based on the trailers. I had a good time with this. This is the origin story of Optimus Prime and Megatron, the Autobots and the Decepticons, and it works well. The animation is really beautiful. The story that's being told here works. The downfall of this brotherhood actually makes sense. The battles, the comedy, everything here works well enough. It was a really, really good time at the movie theater. 18 is Speak No Evil, another big surprise on this list because this is a film that is a remake, I believe, of a Danish film that I haven't seen. I just had a really good time with this one, though. It kind of caught me by surprise, came out of nowhere when I saw it in theaters. James McAvoy gives one of the better performances of the year. He's marvelous here and terrifying, and just the whole plot and seeing how the story here unfolds and where these characters start and the mystery of this family, and it all just really worked for me, and maybe it's because I haven't seen the original that it worked more for me than it did for others. Really loved Speak No Evil. This one stuck with me for a while. And number 17 is The Brutalist, Brady Corbett's brand new 3.5-hour epic. This is going to rank at the top of most people's lists. It's here at 16. It's here at 17 for me because, personally, it's 3.5 hours long. I could never make a 3.5-hour long movie that is as slow as this one is at the top of my list. This thing, I mean, come on. This thing could have been about an hour shorter. But listen, Adrian Brody gives the best performance of the year by far. Felicity Jones is amazing. Guy Pearce is great. This movie, for like 2.5 hours of this runtime, is the best filmmaking you're going to get all year. There's just an hour of fluff that you can cut off this thing to make it truly epic. You're going to be hearing a lot about this movie over the next couple months, though, so just be ready for that. At 16 is Challengers, the brand new film from Luca Guadagnino. Actually, not the brand new, because he made another movie that came out this year that's not on this list. But Challengers is the great tennis movie starring Zendaya and a bunch of other great people like Mike Feist and all of them. And they're just playing tennis and screwing each other. And it's Luca Guadagnino, and you know what you're getting. It's an ultra-tense, sort of fun movie that is just rambunctious and crazy and sexy and also like 20 minutes too long, which is why it's 16 and not like number 1. Now into the top 15. I'll try to give these ones a little more space to talk about, and we'll play a little intro clip to make it a little more special before each movie. So here we go.
Change and look and turn.
Talking about surprises, this really was the year of surprises. Most of the movies that rank on the top of my list are movies that were not on my radar at the beginning of the year, and many of the films that were on my radar at the beginning of the year are not even anywhere near this list. They're actually on the worst movies of the year list. Looking at you, Joker 2. But Strange Darling is a major, major surprise. This is a film that nobody really talked about before it came out or even after it came out. It's a movie that kind of hit me like a drive-by shooting. I saw this thing in theaters not knowing anything about it, not knowing what genre of film it was, not knowing who directed it, not knowing who was in it. And my god, this is a really special flick. Strange Darling is a twist on the slasher genre. You follow this slashing sort of incident that's going on, but you follow it out of order. This film is told in 6 parts, but those 6 parts are not told from part 1 to part 6. They're told out of order. So the movie starts, I believe, at part 4, and then you go back to part 1, and then you jump to part 5. And because of that strange order, it allows to reveal its twists and its turns in such a surprising way that catches you off guard. The lead performance here is absolutely stunning. It's one of the best performances of the year, and all the actors here really bring the A game. Really bring their A game, and just like the violence, the drama, their A game, and really just all of the things that happen in this film, the kills, the twist, the turn. It's constantly keeping you on your toes. It's constantly violent and also kind of scary at different points. This is just a really, really good take on this genre. It's a small budget film that was made with a lot of love, and I really love this type of filmmaking. Filmmaking that comes out of nowhere and tries to be something that elevates the genre or the tropiness of the style of movie that it's doing, right? Or the genre that it's in. And Strange Darling does that. Not enough people saw this movie, not enough people talked about it, so go check it out. Dee Dee is another film that I didn't really see coming. This was a great year for coming-of-age movies. There's another one that I have a little bit higher on this list that I liked a little more than Dee Dee, so we'll talk about it in a little bit. But Dee Dee is a great film about growing up in the early 2000s as a boy who is sort of trying to meet the vast expectations of his family, sort of become popular, enter high school as not a loser, just kind of experience like a good life as a kid. And it's a really simple movie in that way. You're watching this kid, Dee Dee, go through these things like, you know, getting with a girl for the first time. When I say getting, I mean like hanging out with them. Trying to balance a friend group that's sort of drifting away from him. Trying to make new friends and, you know, all this stuff that's going on with him. This movie is kind of an autobiography for the man that actually wrote and directed this film, which I appreciated. There are a lot of nostalgic things in this film for me personally where I'm like, hey, I did that when I was growing up in the early 2000s, and that makes me feel a warm sort of way. I like this movie. Yeah, there's a lot of that in this film. So if you're a 2000s kid, you're gonna get that, and that'll make you like this movie more. The performances are fun, the dialogue is really, like, nice and neat and funny at times and quick, and the movie as a whole is just really, really solid. I think it drags on a little bit too long, which is why I put that other sort of coming-of-age story a little bit higher. I think that one did its pacing better, but this one is still really, really good. Go check out Dee Dee, especially if you're an early 2000s kid. It will make you super emotional. I keep using the word surprise, but surprise, surprise, Wicked is on my list of the best movies of the year. That's mind-blowing. Wicked was on my radar from the beginning of the year, but it's a movie that was on my radar for the wrong reasons. I kind of thought this was going to be something that I hated. This movie had everything wrong going for it. I mean, it's an adaptation of a musical, which is already something like 50% of them that come from Hollywood are horrible. Like, sometimes you'll get a Les Mis, but most of the time you get Cats. It had a cast that kept getting into stupid controversies, saying stupid stuff on the internet, like the freaking poster dilemma that happened. It was splitting one play into 2 movies, which felt like a cash grab. I mean, everything about this, the trailer looked full of CGI. This looked like it was going to be a disaster. It turns out the thing is frickin' marvelous. Wicked is a super fun musical with fantastic performances, a quick pace, a lot of love put into the actual filmmaking process of it, in a movie that has me stuck singing the songs from it 3 weeks after seeing. Like, I've been singing the songs for 3 weeks. They're stuck in my head, man. Ariana Grande gives one of the best performances of the year. Like, I think she's going to win an Oscar for this. She is so unbelievably powerful here, but it doesn't even overshadow how good Cynthia Erivo is and everybody else that's in this cast giving such a powerful performance. Even Jeff Goldblum's here having a good time as the Wizard. The music is a lot of fun. The set pieces, the choreography, the direction is all made with so much passion. There was not a corner cut, which is something that Disney would have done if this was made by Disney. Luckily, this was not made by Disney, so you get a truly beloved production here, which you feel it ooze through the screen. Now, I don't know if part 2 will be as good as this one, but my god, this film caught me way off guard. I didn't realize how much I was going to love it going into it. I'm so glad I loved it as much as I did, because I love when films that I think are going to be bad actually end up being good, and they make me look like an idiot. That's a good thing. It's a bad thing when I'm really excited for a movie and I think it's going to be great, and then it ends up being horrible, because that makes me feel even more like an idiot. Looking at you, Todd Phillips. Conclave is directed by Edward Berger, the same guy that a couple years ago made All Quiet on the Western Front, which was my number 2 movie from 2022, one of my favorite movies of that year, an incredibly tense war film. Conclave is a very different movie. This is sort of a Game of Thrones style film set in the Catholic Church, where the Pope dies and now they need to pick a new Pope, and there's all these different conspiracies and controversies, all these people that want power and don't want power, and Ralph Fiennes is at the center of this, trying to balance the whole process out, balance the personalities, get to know what's going on, and it's just a really suspenseful thriller. Set in a location and a world that maybe you wouldn't think would lend itself well to this kind of story, but it really does. And Ralph Fiennes is the center of this movie, giving a powerful performance that's not very showy. There's not a lot of yelling and screaming and a big Oscar moment, but it's very powerful, it's very quiet, it's in his eyes, and Ralph Fiennes really is trying to win that little gold statue this year, and maybe he'll get it. But the direction here and the cinematography is also stunning. Edward Berger in this little area in the Vatican is able to perform such great cinematic feats. Some of the shots of this movie are stunning. This is also my favorite score of the year. I think the score is unbelievable. That violin beat that plays throughout, it's so addicting. This is really good. And of course you have the third act twist, which I know rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but maybe that's a good thing. The twist is so out there and so out of nowhere that it almost works. There's a part of me that's it doesn't work. It kind of messes up a lot of what makes the movie work, and it's such a big swing that it makes the rest of the movie, which feels more logical, less logical. I actually think, in time thinking about it, the twist is the only thing that made sense of this movie. Any other ending would have felt kind of cookie cutter. This ending is so whoa! Then you have to sit there and go, wow, I did not see that coming. And that means probably did something right. I Saw the TV Glow was directed by Jane Schoenberg, the same person who directed We're All Going to the World's Fair, a very underrated indie horror film. This one is very similarly an underrated horror film, right? A film that was on my radar at the beginning of the year just because I thought the posters, the idea of this film sounded really, really cool, and it turned out to be one of the most possessive horror movies of the year, if you even want to call it a horror movie. It's a movie that I related to very, very strongly. It's a movie about these two kids who are addicted to this, children's show. They're in high school, and they bond over watching this TV show together. And the movie continues as these people get older, and they drift away from each other and away from this show. And it kind of studies this idea of sort of letting go of the things of our childhood and what those things that used to make us super, super happy look like all these years later. And because of that, this film is incredibly depressing and sad and miserable, but also hopeful in a strange way. I don't know, there's so many different things I could say to describe this movie, but I think it's better than just tell you to go watch it. It really is an experience. I really, really enjoyed this movie when I first saw it, and it's one of those films that lingered for weeks and weeks and weeks. This was all I was thinking about, which is why it ended up being so high on this list, when at first I was like, I like the movie, I don't know if I loved it, but when you're really thinking about a movie for weeks and weeks, and the ending of this movie specifically, which is really thoughtful and really, really remarkable, it makes you really think, maybe that movie was a top 10 movie of the year. In this case, it's 11. It's close. And now we get to the top 10 of the year. These are the big boys, so let's get into it. Smile 2, yet again, another surprise. I mean, listen, I really liked the first Smile movie. I thought it was really good for the gimmickiness of what its actual movie was, right? It's a movie about a smiling demon. That sounds gimmicky. It sounds like a C-level horror film, and it ended up being a top and B-level horror film. It was pretty good. A little jump scary, but solid. Smile 2 completely elevates everything that first movie does well. Smile 2, in its essence, is less of a horror movie and more of a character study drama about Naomi Scott, who plays this big musician who is a recovering drug addict who just so happens to get involved with the smiling demon thing. But the film is first most about her and her struggles, and secondly about the demon and the horror stuff that's mixed in perfectly. It's almost like Godzilla -1 last year, where that movie was technically a Godzilla movie about this big monster coming and wrecking shit, but really at its core, it was about this dude getting over the events that had happened during World War II and dealing with his own crap. The Godzilla stuff was just happening around that. And that's such an interesting take to go with a gimmicky horror film that ended up being so good. Naomi Scott gives one of the best performances of the year that she will not get Oscar credit for, obviously, but she should. She is remarkably good in this film. The actual horror sequences outside of the cheap jump scares are well put together, the one where she's in her apartment and you have all the smiling dancers. There's really, really good ideas here that made the movie feel sort of chaotic and scary in a different way. I really love the mental aspect of the horror in these films. It really takes me back to a lot of my favorite horror films, like The Shining, films that want to get into your psychology. They want to get into your subconscious. They want to get into your head and make you feel psychologically, like, fucked. I love the ending of this one. I'm excited to see where they go with the third film, and Smile 2 is just one of the biggest surprises of the year. This film was absolutely amazing. It's one of the best horror films in a year that has some really strong horror films. Like, my top 10, there's a few horror movies on this list. Directed by Alex Garland, one of my favorite writers and directors in Hollywood, who's sadly not going to be directing as much. He's still writing, though. Civil War is a movie that divided its audience the same way it divided the country within the film, which is a good thing in my opinion. You either really, really love this movie like myself and are putting this movie at the top of your list because, my God, there's a lot about it that works, or you hate the movie because it didn't dive into the world building and it didn't make the film sort of a stronger political type of movie. If you didn't know, Civil War is about a modern American Civil War, but in this film, it never explains to the audience why the country broke into Civil War. It doesn't explain the politics going on. It doesn't try to divide its audience. Instead, we just follow the on-the-ground stuff that's happening during the war. We follow these journalists with Kate Winslet, who's in this movie, and Kaylee Spaney, as they're going across the country trying to get to Washington, D.C., so they can interview the president who's about to die, pretty much. And it's a movie that just studies war and journalism, and it does that extremely well. Some of the scenes in this movie are so tense and so suspenseful, I was literally sweating in the movie theater. The acting performances here are great. Jesse Plemons is amazing. Alex Garland's direction is absolutely tight and great. I think the visual style of this movie, a lot of people didn't like it. It's sort of a digital, I don't know how to even really describe it. It's a little bit ugly, let's just put it that way, but I sort of like that in the sense that the world is ugly. I thought the last battle in Washington, D.C. was absolutely brilliant. I mean, who doesn't want to see like a 30-minute long battle in Washington, D.C.? In movies, of course, not in real life. Like, ever since I played Modern Warfare 2 back in 2010, like, I always wanted to see that on the big screen, and they pulled it off here. I just really enjoyed Civil War. It's a movie that I don't have a lot of complaints about. I thought about it long after it came out. I was riveted while watching it, and on a rewatch, it stood up. So, yeah, Civil War, it's here on this list. Furiosa is a movie that none of you saw, and you should all be ashamed of yourself because this thing should not have bombed at the box office. It's a giant epic odyssey, following Furiosa, one of the best characters from Mad Max Fury Road, as we see her origin story from being a little kid all the way up to where she is at the beginning of Fury Road. It's a ginormous epic that a lot of people were disappointed by because it was not technically a sequel to Mad Max Fury Road in the sense that it wasn't this gigantic chase with all the practicality and all that stuff. George Miller decided to make a very different movie, a character study, a movie that, yes, has the practical battles, it has a lot of the crazy filmmaking stuff from Mad Max Fury Road, but at the same time is a much more sort of slower character study. And this one really worked in me between the great performances from Anya Taylor-Joy, the unforgettable villain performance from Chris Hemsworth, the world of Mad Max still being so engaging and different and weird and bizarre and just mesmerizing. This was a cinematic experience. It's the type of movie that was meant to be seen in a movie theater on the biggest screen, and unfortunately not enough of you saw it. So we're never getting that third Mad Max movie that was supposed to complete this weird new trilogy that George Miller was doing. Screw all of you. You should have seen the film. I told you there would be one more coming-of-age story on this list, and here it is, My Old Ass. This is directed by the same person who made Fallout a couple years ago, the great film about a school shooting done with Jenna Ortega and Maddie Ziegler. This one is not tackling as heavy of themes. It's kind of your typical coming-of-age story, but it's done in a way that I really, really enjoyed. This one is about a girl who is about to go away to college, and she's leaving her family farm, which she has lived at her whole life, and essentially moving on to a new life, and she ends up coming in the conversation with an older version of herself, played brilliantly by Aubrey Plaza. There's a lot of stuff going on here. There's a love story, there's some comedy, there's just a lot of, like, the stuff you expect in these types of movies, just done extraordinarily well. The dialogue is super tight and well written, the characters are all fun and engaging and different, the performances are all really, really good. It's just a film I had a good time with. It stuck with me, it spoke to me with a lot of the themes about aging and letting go of, like, you know, being able to move on while still appreciating what you have around you. There's just so much going on here that I really, really loved. It almost reminded me of Arrival in a weird way. It reminded me of that film, which is bizarre to compare this film to Arrival, but it kind of is similar. Because the twist of this movie is, it's brutal, man. Go check out My Old Ass. Nosferatu Nosferatu is a film that I was hoping would be #1 on this list, so in a way, it was a little disappointing, but it's still an absolutely tremendous masterpiece of a movie. Robert Eggers, one of my favorite filmmakers working today, delivers this incredible vampire epic about Count Orlok, who's haunting this woman, Lily Rose Depp, and her husband is trying to stop that from happening, and you have Willem Dafoe giving a crazy performance. You have incredibly striking black and white and sort of not black and white cinematography that is gorgeous. Some of the best shots in cinema this year are in this film. Some of the best shots of the decade. Amazing performances going around, mainly Bill Skarsgård, who plays Count Orlok. Great horror sequences. It's just another great Robert Eggers movie. You know what you're getting from Robert Eggers at this point, and this is another film that absolutely delivers on his promise for what he does in the groundedness and the grittiness of setting his films in their time period. Everything about his filmmaking really works for me, and this film is one of his best. It's incredible. Longlegs is another film that surprised me. It caught me off guard, and it's another film that divided audiences. There's a lot of people that really did not enjoy this one. They thought it was a little out there, a little too crazy. I don't know. I loved it. I thought it was one of the most unique horror movies I saw all year. It was one of the biggest swings of a film I've seen all year, and it just completely caught me by surprise and freaked me out. I had to sleep with the lights on for like a week. This is essentially a serial killer movie. These FBI detectives are looking for a serial killer, and that's probably the best way I could explain it without spoiling anything, but it gets into some really dark things, some creepy themes. It scares you in a way that's so different than the way most horror movies try to scare you in the modern Hollywood world. And then you have Nick Cage giving a wild performance that is either going to absolutely piss you off by how terrible it is and make you laugh because of how bad it is, or you're going to be so mesmerized by it and so amazed by it, and you're also going to be laughing because it's hilarious. It's a wild performance, and what he does here, I still don't know if it's good or over the top. I don't really know. All I know is it's unforgettable. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. I really enjoyed this movie, and I'm looking forward to everything that Oz Perkins does in the future. He's a great filmmaker, and The Monkey, can't wait. Anora is the film that everybody's going to be talking about over the next few months. It's easily the favorite to win Best Picture at the Oscars, in my opinion. I mean, Anora will be the favorite to win Best Picture. It will be the favorite to win Best Actress. It will be the favorite to win Best Director because it's the film that's just been talked about the most this year. It won the Palme d'Or. Is very much deserving of this praise. I was a very, very big fan of this film. Anora stars Mikey Madsen, who plays this sex worker who ends up marrying the son of this Russian oligarch and getting into a bunch of problems. It's very similar to something like Uncut Gems in the fact that it's just a really tense, sort of suspenseful film that has a lot more comedy in it than Uncut Gems. This is a straight-up comedy. The lead performance here from Mikey Madsen is the thing that's really been talked about the most here. I mean, she is just absolutely spectacular in this film and carries it from start to finish, which is not anything new for a Sean Baker film. The way that his filmmaking really works is he does these character studies about sex workers, and the performance of his lead stars is usually what you think about most when watching the films, and Mikey Madsen here is absolutely spectacular, a star in the making in this movie. Sean Baker himself as a writer and director is also phenomenal. He is just always been really, really good, and in this film, he's finally getting sort of the mainstream credit that he deserves, and hopefully he gets his little gold trophy for this. For me, though, it's not the best film of the year. It is #4, but I absolutely adored Anora. It is as good as people are saying, and it will be deserving of all of the praise it gets over the next couple months, which we will be talking about as it happens.
And your old road is rapidly aging.
A Complete Unknown is the brand new musical biopic from Bob Dylan. And you know what? I am a sucker for these types of movies. I love musical biopics. Are they kind of one-layered? Are they predictable? Do you kind of know what you're getting from them? Yes. But when they hit, and they hit as hard as this one hit, they end up being some of my favorite films of the particular year that they're released. And I thought A Complete Unknown, starring Timothée Chalamet, directed by James Mangold, the same guy who made the incredibly atrocious Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny only 1 year ago. You're forgiven, Jim. You made a good movie here. A Complete Unknown is a stunning tale of how Bob Dylan sort of became famous and how he became this amazing musical star that he is today. And yeah, this film is spectacular. It does everything you want from a musical biopic. It has the music scenes. It has the ties to history. It has the great cinematography and the fast pace and the spectacular performances here. Timothée Chalamet gives one of the best performances I've ever seen in a musical biopic, deserving of an Oscar, very much so as Bob Dylan here. Ed Norton is also surprisingly unbelievable in this film. Another Oscar-worthy performance. I love Ed Norton, and in this movie particularly, he really, really stunned me. There's a lot of really good stuff here. If you like Bob Dylan, this is a film that you're probably going to really love. A Bob Dylan biopic is not something that's easy to do because he's such an eccentric character and a weird human being that I wouldn't even dare to make a Bob Dylan film, but I think this really works, and I think it worked out extremely well for everybody involved. This is a film that I thought could just be a generic little musical biopic, and I know a lot of people are probably going to see it in that light, but I ended up enjoying it so so much more than I thought I would, which is why it ends up number 3. I mean, number 3 on this list. Last year, my number 3 was Oppenheimer. So good job, James Mangold. You went from Indiana Jones to being in the same place that Christopher Nolan sat in 1 year ago today. This was a much weaker year for movies, though. I'd like to point that out. This would probably not even be top 10 on last year's list. 2024, what a weird year. Now we get to the top 2, which I do want to make it a point. These two movies, there's a pretty sizable gap between these two movies and everything else. These have been my number 1 and number 2 pretty much all year, and I'd been waiting for something to come along that could really kind of tackle those films and maybe supplant them, but unfortunately nothing did. These films are way better than everything else on this list, at least in the way that I love them. Late Night with the Devil. In a year full of surprises, to the point where I keep using the word surprises, this was the surprise of all surprises. A film that the day I went to go see it, I had never heard anything about it. I knew nothing about this film. I saw a little teaser on YouTube and I thought, that looks interesting, looks a little unique, let's go check it out. This is directed by the Carney brothers. It stars David Dastmalchian, who's been one of the most underrated and underutilized actors in Hollywood, and it's about this late-night TV show host who's competing for rating supremacy, who on Halloween night brings in this possessed girl to do essentially a horror-themed episode. It's sort of the modern take on The Exorcist. And to me, and I'm saying this before we see the Mike Flanagan Exorcist movie that he's working on, but this is probably the best version of The Exorcist we'll ever get. This movie is so incredibly unique. It is by far the most unique thing I saw this year when it comes to filmmaking. It's a weird mix of like found footage meets documentary style filmmaking meets a sort of regular generic filmmaking. There's so much going on here. It's a mix of a bunch of different things and ideas that all sort of work. Essentially, you're the audience watching this late night show unfold, and the mystery of the things going on and the characters and how eccentric they all are and the performances and the twists and the turns and the suspense, it all just works. This is the type of movie that I loved so much when watching in a movie theater. It flew by. I felt like I was floating. The hour and 45-minute runtime of this thing felt like 20 minutes. I was just so locked into this thing. And it's also a weird film experience that I've had where you can almost feel the energy of the whole theater around you. There was a moment in time where I could just feel a packed theater around me, locked into this film, and it was such a special moment. And as the film just kept going and going, and the revelations of the story and the background of the characters and the horror stuff starts happening, it just kept getting better and better, and the movie never fell off for me. Even in the third act, which I know a lot of people, that's where the film sort of loses them. It gets a little crazy, a little convoluted, but the third act really worked for me on a story level where it hones in its themes and it brings them in a way that leaves you unsettled. It chilled me to the bone, the ending of this film, and it's what makes it a great horror film. Is this a conventional horror movie where you have these James Wan-y setups with like a haunted house, or is it jump scares like in Smile, or is it, psychological? What is it? Well, it's a horror movie that just kind of irks in your bones, and it gets in you in a way that you don't truly understand, because it's about like selling your soul, and it's about like evil in a weird way, and selling your soul to evil to get the things that you want, and the sacrifice that may come from that. And it's so brutal in a way, and just so remarkable. This is a film that I've watched so many times now on rewatch, and I've loved it even more since. It's easily the most creative swing of a movie this year. I have not seen a film that had taken such a sort of artistic swing as this one did. It's a film that I just am shocked even exists, and I can't wait to see what these guys do next, because I do believe this was their debut film, or at least their biggest debut film, and David Dastmalchian, give this guy more work, man. He is a champion. Alright, let's get to number 1 already. Okay, listen. There is a real number 1, but I just want to make it a point that the best movie I watched in movie theaters this year, the best movie experience I had, was watching Interstellar in IMAX. It's my favorite movie of all time. It's better than anything I've talked about in this video. It is phenomenal. It is epic. It's a movie that, changed my life, and I'm not even joking about that. It changed the direction of everything I'm doing with my life. It is a just marvelous film that made me fall in love with cinema in a way that I can't even describe, and seeing it in IMAX after 10 years and experiencing it with a packed theater. God dang it, man. I damn near cried. It was amazing. All right, let's get to the real number 1. The best movie of the year. What is it? And this really shouldn't shock anybody. Yeah, Dune. I mean, come on. I feel like nobody, we could all sit here and we could talk about, oh, Dune, it's very generic. There's other better movies. It's too popular to put Dune number 1. I mean, come on. We all know, let's just be real here. 10, 15, 20 years from now, when people are talking about movies from 2024, they're gonna talk about Dune. Dune is the movie that's going to be remembered from this year. It's the best movie of the year, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. It's a masterpiece. Dune Part 2 is a landmark film, the second part of what is this modern adaptation of one of the greatest novel series ever written by Frank Herbert, who's passed away sadly, directed by Denis Villeneuve, who's one of our best filmmakers alive. This has been arguably the best, book-to-screen adaptation we've gotten since The Lord of the Rings. It's epic, it's big, it's massive, and for all those people complaining that the first movie, was a little bit slow, a little bit boring, took too much time to set up the world, well, this one is the explosion. There is so much going on in this film, with Paul Atreides in the desert, training with the Fremen, meeting Zendaya, with one of the best on-screen love stories I think I've ever seen in a movie. You have Austin Butler, who's playing a Harkonnen, who's terrifying and gives us such a gritty and raw performance that reminded me of Heath Ledger's Joker on the impact it kind of left me on screen. You have Baron Harkonnen, who's this big, fat, awful human being. He's just terrifying. You have now Florence Pugh and the Emperor and all that stuff that's going on. And you have Worm riding, and Rebecca Ferguson's here, and she's great, and everybody in this film is just terrific. Javier Bardem gives an underrated performance in this movie. This movie just has everything you wanted in it. It's cinematically masterful, because that's what you get out of Denis films. Visually, they're just unbelievable. The sound, the score by Hans Zimmer. This is just like a perfect movie from start to finish. It's a movie that I saw 5 times in movie theaters, which is a record for me. And each time, it was like, I could have seen this thing 10 times. It kept getting more engaging each time. The third act of this film is unbelievable, and maybe, yeah, you could have wanted a longer third act, a more conventional battle sequence like in the Lord of the Rings films. Instead, you get kind of like a quick battle and then a big confrontation with Paul Atreides and everything that's going on there. But it's so brilliant, and the way that it sets up a third movie that actually differs from the books. This is the first time in my life where I've seen a movie for a book series that I had already read, and I wasn't angry when they made a major change to the ending, because they found a way to make the character of Chani, played by Zendaya, so much more powerful and relevant, and how this is going to lead into a much different version of Dune Messiah, a book that I personally have a lot of issues with from a story perspective. Now it's a story with that one little change that Denis made where it's like, wow, Dune Messiah could really be something special. It could really feel like the ending of a massive trilogy and not just like this weird epilogue-y thing, which is how it feels in the books. This movie is freaking phenomenal, and I've raved about it so much. It's just a perfect movie that I don't think any film that came out this year even comes close to touching it. It is a masterful achievement in filmmaking. It is a cornerstone film. It's a film, like I said, that 20 years from now, we will be talking about. We will be talking about Dune. The same way last year, even though I didn't rank it number 1, Oppenheimer was that kind of film, that kind of landmark film where it's like, wow, this thing is something special. And I know Dune won't get the awards consideration just because it is kind of like a big sci-fi, action-y Star Wars type thing. That's how the Academy will portray it, but it's just such a phenomenal film from top to bottom that if I were to put it anywhere other than number 1, I would be fooling myself. It was easily my favorite movie I saw this year. It was easily the best movie of the year, at least that I have seen yet. Sing Sing, I've heard it's terrific, but haven't got a chance to see it. And yeah, so Dune Part 2 is number 1. Maybe a boring choice for the year, maybe the expected choice. It came out so early in the year in March, but it is what it is. It's the best film that I saw in 2024. So let me know your rankings down below. What are your favorite movies of the year so far? Which ones did I get right? What did I get wrong? Let me know. Please make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications. I post videos like this all day. 2025 is going to be huge. Reviews for a bunch of different movies. Going to be like hundreds of movies I'm going to be reviewing. Tons of rankings, other special, interesting videos, and films. I also make films, so I will be releasing them here and in some other places. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.